deep in the dense jungles of Central America, where sunlight struggles to pierce the thick canopy above, secrets lie buried, silent, beneath layers of earth and time. Here once thrived a magnificent civilization, a people who ruled the skies. The Maya. They were master astronomers, primal spiritualists, ingenious engineers who built a world that still baffles us today. They had no wheels, no beasts of burden, no metal tools. Yet they raised towering pyramids in the heart of the jungle. They charted celestial cycles with eerie precision and carved their history into stones that have outlived centuries. We know so little about them, and what remains feels like whispers, echoing from the shadows of time. But in this video, we won't just revisit the past. We'll walk among the ruins, hear voices from the present, and peel back the veil on legends long forgotten. The Maya, more than a lost civilization. They are a sleeping soul, waiting to awaken. Welcome to the journey into the thousand-year mysteries of the Maya. Before there were temples of stone, before pyramids rose like fingers waving to the heavens, and before the Tzolk'in calendar began to count the breath of the sun, there was only the jungle. A vast, living forest, breathing slow, damp, tangled, and filled with secrets, where morning mist curled around the leaves, and strange bird calls echoed from the darkness between ancient trunks. In that place, thousands of years before Christ, small human groups lived by caution. They moved through the forest like dreamers, leaving no footprints, disturbing no spirits sleeping in stone, in trees, in flowing streams. No palaces, no metal, just calloused hands, memories passed through whispers, and the endless sky as their shelter. But then, something strange began. From deep within the wild, they learned to grow maize. Maize came like a miracle, small, golden, and willing to live in untamed soil. And so, they stopped. They wandered no more. They built tents, built homes, built belief. Small villages appeared like the first dots on a vast canvas. Children laughed under ceiba trees, sacred trees said to bridge the heavens, the earth, and the underworld. Evening smoke from cooking fires rose into the mist, like an invitation for the gods to come closer. At the heart of the village, one person rose, not by force, but by knowing. They could sense when the rains would return. They knew how long it took for the moon to become whole again. They knew what to say when offering the first bowl of maize to the invisible gods. They called him the chieftain, a teacher, a shaman, the first prophet of the Maya. And from there, no one remembers when the first stories were told, or when human eyes first turned upward to the stars. Only this is known. From a single fire beside a stream, a civilization was sparked. A civilization not born of war, but of maize, of birdsong, of deep drum beats in the forest shadows. And that was only the beginning. Because from those hands that planted maize, the Maya were about to reach the sky. After the first thatched huts, after the villages rose from red earth, the Maya did not stop. They dreamed beyond shelter. They began building things taller than the forest and lasting longer than a lifetime. The pre-classic period, from 2000 BCE to around 250 CE, was when the seeds of civilization began to sprout. In places like Nakbe and El Mirador, deep in the Paytan jungle, the first grand ceremonial centers emerged. Not homes, but temples. Not for living, but for reaching the sky. Ancient stone stairways, where people once climbed at dawn to offer gifts to the sun, God, still remain, echoes from the Age of Origins. By now, the Maya had begun to divide their world. Ritual keepers, farmers, builders, leaders. The chieftain was no longer a lone figure, but a class, the spiritual elite, those who received messages from the gods and held the fate of their people in sacred hands. A society was taking shape, with hierarchy, with power, and with a deep burning belief in the divine. But all of this was only the overture. Because when the classic period began, from 250 to 900 CE, the Maya stepped into the most radiant era of their history. Cities rose from the jungle, as if the earth itself was reaching for the stars. Populations exploded, stone causeways stretched from one temple to the next. Then further still, linking cities separated by hundreds of miles. They wrote. They calculated time. They watched the heavens with a precision that still astonishes the modern world. Each city-state was its own cosmos, with kings, temples, armies, farmers, artisans, astronomers, independent yet bound together by religion, language, and ritual. Like stars in the same sky, separate yet orbiting a shared sacred order. From deep within the jungle, a civilization was shining, not with the sound of conquest, but with stone drums and prayers whispered up ancient mist-soaked stairs. And soon, those stars would blaze at their brightest. The greatest age was about to begin. If there was ever a moment to call the zenith of the Maya, this was it. From the 6th to the 9th century CE, deep within the jungles of Central America, the Maya civilization blazed like a brilliant star, glorious in beauty and staggering in complexity. Cities like Tikal, Palenque, Calakmul did not rise the way the world expected. They weren't built beside great rivers. They had no wheels, no metal. And yet, they were born of intellect, of ritual, of a bond between humankind and the cosmos. Each city was a sacred heart. Step pyramids towered like stone-carved prayers. Vast plazas held moonlit ceremonies, shrouded in incense and mystery. And long, echoing ball courts, where sport, politics, and sacrifice entwined. Between the city-states, not just rituals, but networks. White stone causeways cut through the jungle, linking one metropolis to another, like veins flowing through the great Maya body. And along those roads, no wheels rolled, but merchants walked. The Maya had no coins. They traded in cacao beans, seashells, dyed cloth, and obsidian, black as the night. These were not just goods. They carried knowledge, beliefs, ideas. The white roads connected more than temples and plazas. They connected minds. They carried feathers, music, astronomy, and ambition. And all of it was ruled by one figure, the king. But a Maya king was not just a ruler. He was the image of the gods, the only one with power to speak to the universe. When he appeared before his people, draped in radiant feathers, crowned with the mask of an ancestor deity. It was not merely a man they saw, but a living god walking among mortals. He kept the kingdom stable, but also offered blood in sacred rites to maintain the balance of the cosmos. Every drop spilled was a vow that heaven and earth remained bound. That time had not yet stopped turning. In that moment, the Maya were not just living, they were touching the sky. Not metal, not chariots, not weapons. The Maya's greatest weapon was thought. Amid tangled jungles, they built more than temples. They built a system of knowledge so vast, so precise, that even the modern world still bows its head in awe. They wrote, but not with alphabets. They carved into stone, into pottery, into temple walls, using vivid symbols called glyphs. Each sign was a story, a name, a battle, a sacred oath between heaven and humankind. From those glyphs, archaeologists have traced a forgotten history, knowing the day a king took the throne who won an ancient war, and which royal bloodline traced its roots back to the stars. But writing was just the surface. Beneath it lay a mind sharpened by mathematics. The Maya knew zero over 1,000 years before Europe did. They didn't count by tens, they counted by 20s. And they didn't calculate for commerce, they calculated for the cosmos. And so they created calendars. Not one, but 3. Tzolk'in, the 260-day sacred ritual cycle. Hab, the 365-day solar year. The long count, a timeline stretching across millennia. They didn't just know when spring would arrive. They knew when Venus would rise again after years. They didn't just predict rain. They predicted eclipses, solar and lunar, with accuracy that still astounds scientists today. But Maya brilliance wasn't confined to stone scripts. It lived in the pyramids, aligned with the sun's rising on the equinox. It pulsed through the carvings, where gods, beasts, and humans merged into one vision. Step into an ancient temple, and you'll see, nothing was random. Every stair, every hallway, every statue was part of a cosmic order. A 3-tiered universe, heaven, earth, underworld, all bound by a central axis called the world tree. So what sustained this wonder? Not gold, not tribute, but maize, cacao, cultivated earth. The Maya economy was rooted in agriculture. Rotating milpa fields circled their city-states, growing maize, beans, cotton, squash. Every seed, a miracle. And after every harvest, a ritual of thanks to sky and soil. Within the cities, potters shaped clay into divine forms. Stone carvers chiseled gods from limestone. Weavers dyed threads with the colors of the sky, then traded them for gems from mountains and shells from distant seas. Behind each towering pyramid were hands planting maize, drying cotton, stirring cacao. The Maya economy didn't just feed the people. It laid the foundation for the rise of genius and the fire of ritual. A civilization built by the mind, but kept alive by the hand. There was no sound of a grand collapse, no triumphant final battle, just a day, when stone footsteps no longer echoed through the plaza, just a morning, when kitchen smoke no longer rose by the pyramids. The fall of the Maya civilization was a slow, mournful song, without a climax, only fading notes dissolving into the jungle. And behind that quiet melody lay tangled, deep-rooted causes, tearing apart the very fabric of Maya glory. First came nature's fury. Modern studies of sediment cores and climate models reveal this. The Maya faced relentless, brutal droughts recurring over generations. Unending dry seasons scorched the milpa fields. The absent rains dried not just the earth, but faith itself. When the stone wells emptied, when the corn roots no longer sprouted, when the gods stopped answering prayers, the cracks spread from farmland to altar stone. Then came inner warfare, not with an outside enemy, but between the very city-states that once dreamed a common dream. Tikal and Calakmul, Maya's two superpowers, locked in centuries-long conflict, not just for land, but for divine authority, for influence, for belief. Smaller cities were drawn into the spiral, switching sides, conquered, abandoned. People fled, temples turned to ash, and blood spilled not only in battle, but on the sacrificial altars. At the same time, the political and religious systems began to rot from within. When the king, once seen as a bridge to the cosmos, could no longer summon the rain, could no longer open the sky, the people began to doubt. And when belief wavers, the very foundation of sacred rule begins to crumble. No more loyalty, no will to build temples, no reason to live, in a world where the gods seem to have turned away. And finally, the weight of their own brilliance, a civilization that rose too fast to adapt. Exploding population, vanishing resources, forests stripped bare, soil exhausted, a social structure too complex to sustain itself. They reached the heights, but built no path back down. And when the winds changed, everything began to unravel. No more scribes to keep the calendar. No more hands to sweep the plaza. No more blood upon the sacred stones. Only the forest remains, deep green, silent, patiently reclaiming what once belonged to the Maya. People often ask, when did the Maya civilization disappear? But perhaps it's the question itself that's wrong, because the fall of a civilization does not mean the disappearance of a people. The truth is, by the end of the 9th century, great cities in the south, like Tikal, Copan, Quirigua, fell silent. But in the north, the Yucatan Peninsula, lights began to rise. The Maya didn't vanish, they moved. They left the crumbling cities behind. They ventured deeper into the jungle, northward, and built a new chapter, less grand, but more grounded. Cities like Chichen Itza, Uxmal, Mayapan emerged as a quiet answer to the collapse. There, the Maya kept living, kept praying, planting maize, worshiping gods, carving stories into stone. The rituals didn't die, they shifted form. The old gods were still named, just not shouted in plazas, but whispered in the shade. Many Maya communities chose the forest, guarding their culture like a small flame, passed from hand to hand, never loud, but never extinguished. And when the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, they didn't find ruins of a lost race. They found living people, speaking Mayan, wearing woven cloth, offering young corn, and calling down rain with ancestral dances. They weren't the descendants of the ancient Maya. They were the Maya. The story never truly stopped. Many believe the Maya exist only in museums, that they are a name from the past, a fallen civilization turned to rubble. But if you go to Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, you'll hear Mayan, not from an archaeological tape recorder, but in markets, in schools, in the corn blessing rituals at dawn. Today, more than 6 million people still speak Mayan languages. They wear hand-embroidered clothes, they follow the lunar calendar to farm, they still perform rain ceremonies when the dry season overstays its welcome, and they still whisper the names of ancestors, just as their forebears did 1,000 years ago. In a small village in the Guatemalan highlands, you might see an old woman lighting candles by the hearth, humming an ancient song in a language not found in textbooks, only in the memory of the earth. You'll see children learning to count in Mayan, a single dot for 1, a bar for 5. You'll witness the Popol Vuh festival, where myth, dance, fire, and drum beats merge, as if time folded in on itself, letting past and present dance together in the square. Maya culture was never excavated. It lives in warm corn soup, in the breath of real people, in the eyes of an elder scanning the skies, reading clouds as prophecies. The Maya are not beneath the earth. They are walking beside us. We've simply forgotten to look closely.